After 1 full year of full-time pseudo-slow travel, we've been to 10 countries and 26 cities. So we think it's a good time to do a recap and talk about the things we like most and least about each of those places. And then at the end, we're going to share with you our most and least favorite places overall. And at the very end, we're going to answer the question that we're getting almost daily now, which is,
are you ever moving back to Ecuador?
All right, guys, before we dive in, though, be sure to hit the subscribe button down there if you're thinking about moving abroad, because we're going to show you all the best places to live on this channel.
We landed in Portugal to start our slow travel adventure on October 21st, 2023, which is exactly 1 year ago today.
We're going to talk about the first place. This is going to be in order of our travel. So we started in Portugal, and we spent the first few days in Matosinhos.
Gosh, that seems like a lifetime ago, doesn't it?
It does. It seems like years ago. That's the thing when you're doing full-time travel like this is the time warps. It seems like sometimes it goes really fast, and then other times it goes so slow, and it seems like a few days or like it's more like a few weeks.
Yeah, it is amazing how that works. I guess because we're so immersed in everything new and going out and having all the adventure and learning our way around and everything. So our brains are very full.
So we spent the first few days in Matosinhos. Then we were in Porto for almost, 2-3 weeks or something like that?
2.5 weeks, I think.
Yeah, so we just stayed in that area on our first trip. We had planned on staying longer, but at that time they changed the NHR tax scheme rules, so we decided to actually cross Portugal off our list because our tax rate would just be too high there compared to some of the other countries on our list.
Which is too bad because we really did like Portugal a lot. We really enjoyed the great food scene, which may not be the first thing that comes to mind, but that was the first thing that came to my mind because we ate like way too much.
Yeah.
And the wine and the port, all of that was incredible. And I really liked the history.
Yeah, and it was really affordable. We were surprised about how affordable it was, especially wine, since we like to drink wine. You can get a really good bottle there for like $2.50, $3, and you're going a high dollar wine.
Yeah, but you can get yourself in trouble, so you do have to be careful about that.
Yeah. It was a bit rainy, though, while we were there.
Yeah.
It rained almost the whole time we were there, and I guess that we were there during the rainy season, so that's part of the reason why.
Yeah, the weather was not ideal, and so therefore it's not a place that I would want to go back to during that time of year.
Yeah. All right, so when we left Portugal, we flew to Seville, Spain, and then we took the train from Seville to Granada, and then from Granada to Malaga. So what did you think about Spain, Amelia? Southern Spain. We were in Andalusia.
Oh, that was such an awesome trip. My gosh. Seville was gorgeous. Actually, I loved all three places. They're all fantastic. One of my favorite parts was just the ease of traveling through the country, through southern Spain, just to be able to jump on those trains. It was so stress-free, so calming and relaxing, and also extremely affordable.
Yeah, I loved the train travel.
Yeah.
It's something that we just don't have in the U.S. And yeah, I love the history, everything. It was just so beautiful. I mean, it blew my expectations out of the water. However, I didn't really like Seville and Malaga that much as I was expecting. I love Granada, though.
Yeah, me too. Granada was amazing. I loved Seville. I thought it was a beautiful and romantic city. I liked Malaga a lot, too. What's really interesting is that all three were completely different.
Yeah, they were. I'd say the major downside that we experienced while we were there is the tourist fatigue. There's definitely an anti-tourist sentiment where we were in Spain, and it was so crowded. I could understand why in Seville and Granada and Malaga. We were there right after they lit the Christmas lights in Malaga, and there were so many people that sometimes you can't even walk down the sidewalk or the streets because there's just so many people. And we did experience some of the locals are just not that friendly to the tourists.
I can't blame them either because it was overwhelming for us. We're being tourists in their city and we were experiencing tourist fatigue. So I can't even imagine what they must be feeling. And some of those tour groups were just massive and they would take over like an entire areas where you couldn't even get around. We experienced that a lot in Granada. I didn't think that there was nearly as much tourist fatigue overall in Granada, but we definitely felt it in Seville.
Yeah. So when we left Malaga, we flew to Rome, Italy.
Yeah, that was amazing too. Wow, the history. Oh, it was so gorgeous. Rome is a beautiful city.
Yeah, I loved it way more than I expected. I've always wanted to go. I'm a history buff and I love the Roman history. And it was just like so much bigger and more fantastic than I even expected it to be.
But the city itself was actually really easy to get around, which is one of the things I liked about it a lot. It was pretty walkable, and I liked the neighborhood we stayed in. People there were really friendly. There were no issues with us being tourists at all. They were
Yeah.
very welcoming.
Yeah. We don't have any real complaints about Rome.
No.
Our only regret is that we didn't stay longer. We were only there for a couple of weeks, and we barely scratched the surface on all the things that we wanted to see because, well, we work. So we spent a lot of time working, and then we tried to do the fun stuff in our spare time, and we just didn't have enough time.
Yeah, the next time we go, I want to spend an entire day in the Roman Forum because I just could not get enough of that. But also, we need to go back to Italy to actually explore the rest of the country. Kind of a high priority.
I know. We need to spend time in the north, the central, and the south, including Basilicata and Puglia and Sicily. And I mean, those are like trips all on their own.
Yes.
I wish that Italy wasn't in the Schengen zone so that we could just go travel throughout there more.
Yeah, that would be nice.
So from Rome, we flew over to Athens, where we stayed for a month. And we went, while we were in Athens, we also went to Glyfada, which is kind of a suburb outside of Athens. And then end of June and July, we were also in Corfu.
Athens was a neat experience. There were definitely some more cons that we experienced there. I was shocked by how incredibly affordable it was. I loved the food, and I really liked being able to take that tram.
Were you shocked in a good way, or were you just surprised?
Oh, sorry. I was surprised.
Yeah, no,
shocked in a good way.
We talked about being shocked in our London video, and all the Brits were like, shocked in here means it's negative. You're surprised in a bad way. You mean to say you're surprised because that means it in a good way.
I was surprised in a good way by the prices.
I know. As Americans, we say shocked to mean good or bad. We
Yes,
would say,
we do.
yeah. I love the history of Athens.
Yeah.
The Parthenon and the Acropolis and the ancient Agora. And I mean, the history there is just incredible. I just love that part of it. And the city I thought was pretty, and walking around and seeing all of those ancient structures. But the culture shock was too much for me. I didn't feel welcome there. I couldn't get into the groove of how they do things. A lot of things just didn't make sense to me, and I would do everything wrong, and then they would yell at me for doing things the wrong way, like at the grocery store or on the tram. I mean, I just couldn't do anything right in that country for some reason.
I didn't think it was nearly as bad in Corfu, but
It wasn't, no.
Yeah, they were a bit more relaxed there, but they definitely have a bit more of an abrasive personality, or their culture is a bit more abrasive. And if you're not used to that, it can be a bit of an adjustment. And it certainly was for one of us.
Yes, it was. I read an article about this couple from the U.S. that moved to Crete. And in their article, they talked about public venting and how the Greeks like to get all of their frustrations out in the street in public by yelling at each other. And we experienced that more than once of the Greeks yelling at each other in the street.
It's an interesting cultural difference for sure.
From Athens, we flew to the capital of Albania, which was Tirana. So we spent almost 3 months in Tirana. Then we also went to Durrës and Shkodër in the north. And then in the end of July and August, we spent in the south, part of it in the south. We started in Saranda and then went to Vlora, and then we went back to Tirana for another month. So altogether, we spent over 4 months in Albania this year.
Yep, loved it. Tirana, loved Tirana. I love the Albanian people.
Yeah, and they loved us.
They did. Everybody was so welcoming and friendly.
They really like Americans there. Our president, Woodrow Wilson, was the lone holdout. He voted that Albania should be its own country back in the 19-teens, around World War I or something. So Albania exists today because of the American president holding out, because all the other votes were no. It was supposed to be combined. So they're still thankful to have for America, for their country. And we saw American flags flying all over the place there. And people would stop us and tell us welcome to their country. And yeah, we felt extremely welcome there. I will say, though, that we felt like the people in the north were a lot more friendly than the people in the south.
I would agree with that. They are friendlier in the north, but overall, everybody is still very friendly and helpful. And the country itself is just beautiful. It is a developing country, so you don't have as easy of a time getting around as we did in some of the other countries. Internet, superior internet. So one of the things we've noticed about some of these developing countries is that some of their infrastructure is actually a lot better than some of the old places, like that place in Malaga that had negative internet speed.
Yeah, I think it was 4 meg. And yeah, in Rome we had 10 meg in Rome, and the guy, our host, called that high speed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
It was
we
exciting.
have great internet in Albania. My main complaint is the train system isn't up and running. They
Not
have train tracks, but they're not in use. They're redoing their whole train system, and it's been in the process for like 5 years now. And I couldn't find an end date of that renovation process. So I don't know if they'll ever get it back. They're supposed to connect up to Montenegro, to Podgorica, which will then allow them to connect to the Euro rail network. And I wish they would get that going. It'd be really nice too if the train went down to the south to Flora and maybe Saranda.
That would be
And then if
amazing.
it went all the way into Greece, that would be awesome.
Maybe one day. They are doing a lot of development. They are working on their roads, and they're building a new airport in Flora. They have a lot going on. Right now, the country is so affordable. That's another thing that we really liked. And it's extremely safe. Everywhere we went, we felt super safe. It has a lot to offer, despite not having a train system and no direct flights to the U.S. But supposedly, there's supposed to be one coming in 2025.
To New York, right?
Yes.
JFK, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, so we spent, Albania was by far the cheapest place in Europe that we stayed. I think we averaged less than $3,000 a month, and most of that was lodging. So if you do a long-term lease, you can cut like a third of the lodging by what, in a third? Like a third of the cost of what we were paying.
So you cut it by 2/3.
Yeah, you cut it by 2/3.
Yes.
That's right. Good job.
Thank
you. So that was the most expensive thing. It was super affordable to live there. It's actually not as cheap as where we are now. So we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Okay, what's next?
Next, we drove to Podgorica, Montenegro, and we stayed in Podgorica for a few days, and then we went to Kotor and stayed for a month.
You know, it's funny because when I was doing the research about Podgorica, it got a lot of negative publicity. That's not the right word. People didn't like it as much.
Yeah, they call it the most boring capital in Europe.
It's very
laid back.
I liked it. I don't think I'd want to live there for a long time, but if you really are looking for a chill place to go and decompress, that's easy, it's walkable, it's not crowded, it's extremely affordable, I think that's a good option. It's pretty.
I actually really liked it. It had nice, wide, flat sidewalks.
Yeah.
The people were friendly. Everybody was it's super affordable. It's way more affordable than the coast of Montenegro.
It is.
So we also visited Tivat, Perast, and Budva while we were there. So those are the 5 cities that we visited. Kotor was so beautiful. The natural beauty in that along that whole part of the coast is unbelievable. It's almost otherworldly. I couldn't get tired of looking at it. We opted to spend a little bit more on an Airbnb up on the side of the hill with an amazing view of the Bay Area, and really, really glad that we did that.
That was worth it. I really enjoyed the drive from Podgorica over to Kotor. It was just gorgeous. I mean, you just cannot if you like natural beauty, that is the place. The temperatures weren't bad at all when we were there. It was kind of rainy, but the weather wasn't bad. So you could really get out and enjoy Mother Nature quite a bit more. Plus then you have the bay and you have the ocean.
And the mountains.
Yeah, it's got a lot to offer.
It does. Our main complaint, though, is that it's really super crowded, especially in Kotor and Budva. There's just and Perast, there's just so many tourists there. And we were there during shoulder season. It wasn't even nearly as busy as it normally gets. There was one time where there were 3 cruise ships in the harbor there in Kotor. And the old town just gets so crowded. You end up standing like out of the way for 2 or 3 minutes while huge tour groups from those cruise ships go by, and you just can't even walk down some of those narrow alleys. I think that was my biggest complaint.
Well, and in the tourist prices. The restaurants, the prices were higher in the main tourist areas, but you know that you're going to get that everywhere you go. That's not that surprising. I was surprised by how crowded it would get at times, and also that made the traffic get really backed up to come in and out of Kotor because there's just that one road. But they are working on expanding that, so hopefully some of that will become better.
From Montenegro, we flew to Paris, France.
Paris.
And while we were in France, we spent a few weeks there. Then we spent a month in Dijon, and we also went to Beaune while we were there. And then we spent a few weeks in Lyon.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time in France, which was not really part of the original plan, but we got there and we really liked it, so we stayed.
Yeah, so that's one of the benefits of traveling the way we are, is that if we really like a place, we stay longer.
Yeah, and France was like nothing else. The architecture, the French architecture, I just absolutely love it. The history is amazing. Paris, the whole country is just beautiful, at least the parts we have seen. I shouldn't say the whole country, because we barely even scratched the surface of France as well. But
And again, the train travel. We love the
yes.
train travel. It was so nice to be able to take that from Paris to Dijon and our day trip to Beaune. And then when we went to Lyon, it was so nice. I love looking at all the history. And because they surrendered so quickly in World War II, they preserved all of their buildings. Their old buildings are still standing. And I mean, that was a nice thing that they weren't all leveled like they were in some of the other parts of Europe.
If you missed our lies we believed about France video, we covered a lot of this in there. But I honestly, there's a lot of stereotypes about France and the French people. And so I was expecting them to be snooty and not welcoming. And that was not true at all. Everybody was super nice and friendly. A lot of people spoke English. We attempted to speak with them in French, and they were very gracious. They were not snobby about it.
Not at all. They helped us. They tried to help us.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a major downside is the language barrier, because they really appreciate it if you speak French, and especially if you're going to live there, you would need to
Yes.
take French classes and get at least functional with it. And it's hard. I mean, I was trying to tell somebody I wanted a glass of wine, and I say un verre de vin, and they would just they're like, what? And I said, a glass of wine, and they're like, oh, and then they would repeat it back to me, and I swear it's exactly what I was saying, and I would repeat it, and they're like, no.
Yeah, it was more expensive there too. So that is a bit of a downside if you're on a tight budget. We've heard that there are cheaper places in France, and for sure, Dijon was like half the price of Paris. So
Yeah.
you can definitely find more affordable options. And Dijon was just magical. I just loved it.
Yeah, it was amazing. All right, from France, from Lyon, we flew to London, England, and it really wasn't on our travel itinerary, except I wanted to get a new camera, the one that we are filming with right now, and I really wanted to be able to go speak to someone in English, and we could have done that in France, I guess, but I went to an awesome camera shop in London. The people were professional photographers, and they really helped, but
It was a great experience.
It was.
And London was amazing, and I'm really glad we went. But holy cow, was it expensive!
yeah,
Wow.
it totally blew our budget. We were there for what, 10 days?
10 days.
10 days, and we spent more there than we did for a month in every other place that we were at.
And that's not because we did a lot of shopping. The lodging.
Yeah, that doesn't include the camera. None of that.
No.
Just the lodging, the dining, the transportation. It's all just so expensive in London.
And there's a reason for that. I mean, London has it all. The train travel was superb. The food scene was absolutely incredible. It was by far the best food scene we've experienced.
Yeah,
which is
amazing.
interesting because that's another stereotype that England has terrible food. Well, not what we experienced, and it was really nice to be able to go and speak English. And people were nice, and I loved all of. Besides the history, of course, I loved all of the big, beautiful parks. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, so London is considered a forest by definition because there's so many trees. It is really a heavily treed area. It was amazing. I think the major downside, though, is it's just too expensive and too crowded in London.
Right.
And of course, we said that we were in England, and all the Brits were like, you didn't go to England, you went to London. It's not the same. You need to get out and go to the countryside. And I thought, if somebody's they're like, oh, if you go to London, it's like going to New York and thinking you've seen England, the United States. But if somebody was going to go tour the U.S., I wouldn't say, go to a small town in Kansas because why would you recommend that? But that's exactly what all the Brits were like. Go to this small town. They listed all these small towns nobody has ever heard of as like a more authentic experience in England. And we do want to do that. We definitely want to come back and tour the countryside and the smaller towns and places in England. But, one trip, we had 10 days. I wanted to buy a camera. We're going to go to London for that. We're not going to go to a small Kansas farm town for that. So if you're going to go to the U.S. and you've got 10 days, go to Boston, New York, Washington, D.C., Chicago. Don't go to my hometown in Kansas. All right. So next we flew from London to Corfu and then Corfu to Albania, but we've already talked about that. So after we left Albania in August, we flew to Istanbul, Turkey.
Istanbul was an interesting trip. I'm glad we stayed in the tourist area. However, I would have done it differently. So I would have stayed outside of the main tourist area where we were at and have just gone and visited those places.
Yeah.
Because they were really, well, it was very touristy and they were crowded and they were really targeting tourists with the tourist scams. And we fell for one of them. And boy, they were like primo with the scam. I had no idea until the very end. And I was like, wow.
Yeah. I call
that was painful.
I call it Istanbul because it's just, man, the scams were just everywhere. I mean, everything from taxi drivers to restaurants to the shoe shine scam that we fell victim to. And I'm glad we talked about that because a lot of people posted that they did not fall for that scam because we talked about it in our videos. So just because other YouTubers have talked about it doesn't mean everybody has seen those. We didn't see any videos about that, even though I know some of the YouTubers that just talked about it.
Yeah, we missed that video.
We missed it. Sorry, guys.
Yep.
But anyway, hopefully you guys have learned from that. Don't fall for the shoe shine scam. If they drop the brush, just keep walking. But
we did have a really good time in Istanbul. We really enjoyed it. It was really neat to go from the European history then to, well, Istanbul, part of that is in Europe. So to have you're in Turkey. So it's completely different landscape, different culture, everything, architecture. Yeah, it was really interesting. And I liked too that it was walkable. We had nice weather. Mm-hmm. The people were nice. They were nice as they were trying to scam you. It's not like they were aggressive or rude or anything like that.
Super nice scammers.
Yeah. It was good shopping. I mean, it was really fun.
When we left there, we flew to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, which is where we are right now. And we've been here for 2 months already. Can you believe we've been here 2 months?
No, I cannot. But it's definitely been if you guys missed our other video, we got really delayed because of JP's health issues. Well, with you being sick twice.
Yeah.
That was definitely put us behind schedule.
Yeah. But I would say that hands down, though, what we've experienced so far in Malaysia is that these are by far the friendliest people.
Absolutely.
Everybody is so nice. I mean, and the healthcare, we've really enjoyed getting the healthcare done here. And they were so compassionate and friendly and they just make you feel at ease just by how friendly they are.
Yeah, and everybody we've encountered has been like this. Everybody's just been nice and helpful and smiling, and it's extremely affordable here. Yeah. And we both feel very safe. I go out by myself all the time because I had to when JP was sick, and I went out and did my video, and nobody bothered me, and we really like it. My only complaint is that it is hot.
And humid.
And I like to be outside during the day and doing stuff outdoors, but it is a bit painful to do that. We went out and did some filming the other day, and we were both just so drained because we got overheated. Yeah, we were soaked. Our shirts, everything was just wet from the sweat. Yeah, it wasn't pretty. No, it's bad. Don't worry, we won't put that part in the video. I think the coolest part, though, is how futuristic it is. It really, I told Amelia, it feels like Blade Runner here. It's just the city is so futuristic with all the digital billboards, the LED billboards everywhere, and the buildings are so futuristic looking, except for the Petronas Towers. They look very 50s retro sci-fi. Yeah, they're so cool. I feel like there should be like a bolt of lightning between those two orbs at the top and like some madman up there. I love watching the storms. It's monsoon season, and we've had some comments from people saying they would never want to visit here during monsoon season. I have to say it actually has not been that bad because they know how to manage the weather, so it doesn't shut the city down. Yeah. But to get to actually watch the storms has been so fascinating. Yeah. Before we share what our most favorite and least favorite places were, if your goal is to move abroad and get a higher quality of life or a lower cost of living like what we're doing, then you definitely want to check out our Move Abroad Express eCourse. It walks you through every step of the process of moving abroad so that you can do it with more confidence and a lot less doubt. We poured all of our knowledge from 7 years of living abroad into this eCourse, so it really will help you fast track your move abroad. The money saving tips will more than cover the cost, but the real value is in the peace of mind you get because you're going to be so much better prepared. We also have a steep discount on it right now, but it's only for 1 more week, so scan this QR code here or go to ameliaandjp.com/MAE to lock in your discount right now. You'll also get lifetime access to course updates and to our private and supportive community of current and future expats. All right, Amelia, now for our most and least favorite places. What do you think? I guess I have a tie between Dijon and Tirana.
Yeah, and they're so radically different,
know.
though. I mean, I loved both of those places. I also really like Kuala Lumpur.
I do too.
But I would say, as far as like overall, like everything, Dijon is my favorite. But if you want to factor in cost as like the most important factor, I think I actually prefer Tirana, Albania.
There's pros and cons to both because I like the fact that if you're in Dijon, then you can be in Paris, which I love Paris, but Paris is a little bit out of our price range. Plus, it's a really big city, but you pay more still because you've got that infrastructure. Whereas Tirana and Albania in general is still developing, so it is a lot more affordable. Plus, I don't know, kind of reminded me of being in Ecuador, which is why it felt so homey to me because it isn't quite so polished. I like that it's still a little bit of a diamond in the rough.
In the rough, yeah. One of our Albanian viewers commented that it's a box of gems that's rapidly being polished. And I have to agree with that.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good quote about Albania.
All right, well.
The least favorite?
Least favorite. I think I know what yours is. You've been very clear.
Mine's Athens. My least favorite overall was Athens, followed closely by London. I was in London over about 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, and it felt completely different now than it did then. And I didn't like it that much this time. Also Vlora. I was surprised Vlora, Albania, I did not really like. It's a kind of a beautiful beach city, but I preferred Saranda. It's a little bit more rustic.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I liked Athens. Maybe had we gone to Athens first instead of going to Rome first, I would have loved Athens, but it was a little bit disappointing after being in Rome. And also, with the culture shock, that made it pretty difficult.
Yeah, I didn't want to leave the Airbnb. I was afraid I was going to get yelled at. I really had some anxiety about interacting with people because I just felt like I couldn't do anything right there.
And London, I liked, but it was very crowded. Now, granted, we were there in high season, so what do you expect? And it was fun. I have no regrets, but I don't really want to go back. I absolutely want to go to England and explore more of the surrounding areas in the country. But
yeah,
it was, and the prices were they were shocking in a bad way.
Yeah, the prices were ridiculous. All right, so now to answer the big question, are we ever going back to Ecuador?
Absolutely, we are. I am homesick for Ecuador, even though we just talked about all these great places. I miss it. I miss our friends and our adopted family.
Yeah, I miss the mountains, the weather, because it's like in the 70s year round there. I miss that constant weather. You don't have to worry about like, is it going to be really hot today or is it going to be cold? I miss that part.
Yeah, I do like being able to live in a place where you don't need to have heat or air conditioning because I struggle with the air conditioning and, like I said earlier, not being able to go out during the daytime and enjoy the outdoors.
Yeah, because there's like a span of 4 or 5 hours in the middle of the day here where we just don't go outside because it's just too hot. So yes, we will be back in Ecuador next year. We have to go back to reset our visa so we don't lose our permanent residency visa. But we probably won't be staying there for very long this time because we still want to tour South America. So after we are done spending the next few months here in Southeast Asia, then we're going to go back to the Americas and do kind of the same thing there, work our way from north to south.
Central and South America.
Central and South America. Yeah.
And I'm super excited about that. But Ecuador will be our easier home base. I always say Ecuador is our home base, but it's not really a true home base right now because we're halfway around the world.
Yeah. And we don't have a permanent resident. I mean, we don't have a
there
home
is that.
there.
Yes.
So it's like we stored a bunch of our stuff at some friend's house, well, a few things, and then she's selling some things still. But, so we don't have like a permanent home there.
Nope, just permanent residency.
Yeah.
Not the same.
All right, so we still have all these travels planned and we don't have anything booked yet. So if you guys really want us to go see someplace and do an exploratory trip and show you guys, then make sure to let us know in the comments below so we can add that to our list.
And remember to check out the Move Abroad Express eCourse to fast track your move abroad.
All right, guys, that's all we have for this video. Be sure to leave us a like before you go and we will see you all next time. Ciao.
Ciao.